This is gonna take Cracker Jack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to the Thinking Critical Comic Book Podcast. Today I've got my good friend Doug Ernst, writer of Soul Finder, the comic series, also a columnist at the Washington Times. How you doing, Doug?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm glad you could come back. I like having these kind of fuller conversations about certain topics. Like recently, I did a video basically talking about that Batman Catwoman controversy where, whether Batman performs certain acts on Catwoman. I was like, I don't want to talk about this. This is stupid. I think it's weird that anyone even thinks about this stuff. But you have to talk about it because if you don't put up an objection to these kind of things, the mob will just never stop. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel like they are isolated, sometimes alone. Sometimes people are humiliated just for having opinions on stuff like this. So almost like I don't feel like I'm a leader, but I do feel like I have to say something when it's warranted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of times people don't want to speak up because they don't want to be the ones taking the slings and arrows of a giant digital mob of people, like you said. But usually if people could be like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, there's other people that actually think the way that I do. I'm not a freak. Then more people are willing to sort of speak up and be like, no, I agree with that guy. So it takes usually a couple people who are just willing to be like, you know what, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. And if you like it, great. If you don't, no problem.
Yeah, there's so many topics that come up that I would never speak on my own. This would never come up on the channel, but I'm almost forced to bring it up. And a lot of times it's like I mentioned, what happens with the mob when you want to voice an opinion that's different than them, they try to isolate you, humiliate you, intimidate you into silence. They rarely ever want to engage in honest discourse, like about what your criticisms are, whatever. And they use a lot of different argument tactics. I kind of want to go over them and how it silences people from actually speaking their opinion. I'm sure you see these fallacies all the time, working at a newspaper, also with your own YouTube channel, where people are always trying to talk about anything but your actual point.
Right. Yeah, there's always some sort of distraction, and it's like you're talking about apples, and then suddenly they're talking about zucchinis, and you're just like, let's talk about apples. We're talking about apples here. Stay on the subject.
Yeah, so I've got a few logical fallacies that you'll just see that are rampant on social media, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, where people will kind of try and change your conversation because they don't actually want to talk about the points you're making. So I just want to point these out so the viewers, if you see this happening to yourself, you need to know what's happening so you can get around it and get back to what you're saying, or perhaps even step away from the conversation. The most prominent fallacy I see when people are having conversations or disagreements is the ad hominem. Someone rejects or criticizes another person's view simply based on personal characteristics, background, physical appearance, or other features irrelevant to the argument at hand. I know you probably get this a lot. You are very upfront about your religious beliefs. You are a devout Catholic, and I've seen people in the past. Well, Doug's Catholic, so his opinion doesn't matter on this subject. Somehow it's tainted because they hold a different religious perspective than you.
Yeah, it gets weird. Twitter is one of those places where a lot of times people are just trying to show how witty or smart they are. And it's like, if I can just sort of tear this guy down with an ultimate zinger and drop a nuke on his head, he'll just run off into the corner crying. So if I just say something really mean to him, they'll bring up the scandals in the church or whatever and be like, well, you blah, 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 even though it has nothing to do with it, or it's like just a general cultural issue. They'll go to something with the Vatican. Like I'm going to apologize for a scandal or bad behavior or even illegal behavior. It's like, when have you ever heard me defend someone who broke the law? Never. So I don't know what this has to do with. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's their tactic. They want to get people, anyone that's looking at it, obviously in Twitter, everyone can see your conversation. They want to do anything they can to just discredit you, whether it's the way you look, if you're part of a group. I think you probably saw this recently. There was that Neil Gaiman controversy with the casting of the character of Death on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I guess he recognized that one person that had criticism, or at least one person that had criticism, had hashtag Comicsgate in their bio or whatever on Twitter. Oh, the comic skaters are here now, so all these criticisms are completely invalid because this one person, whether their criticism is correct and what they're saying is correct, I don't have to listen to them whatsoever because they're affiliated with a group that I don't like.
Yeah, it's really weird because I could look at somebody that I disagree with politically or in any number of issues. Like you mentioned the religious stuff. If someone makes a good point, it's a good point. If they're telling the truth, they're telling the truth. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be someone from Venezuela. It doesn't matter who it is. Every once in a while, somebody who you disagree with, even if disagree with them 90% of the time, maybe 10% of the time they tell the truth and they say something that's valid. Then you have to be like, okay, I don't like this guy, but he is telling the truth on this particular issue.
But yeah, you can't let yourself be marginalized or be brought down because of some type of affiliation or your physical appearance. You see that one a lot too. Oh, look, this person's so fat or whatever. Listen, were we talking about obesity? Were we talking about general health? Or are we talking about comic books here? Stop changing the subject and kind of stick to it. Another thing you see a lot is the straw man argument, where someone attacks a position the opponent doesn't really hold. Instead of contending with the actual argument, he or she attack an easily defeated effigy, which the opponent never intended upon defending anyway. You see this one a lot. Like, you remember the Ghostbusters remake?
I do unfortunately remember the remake, yes.
I saw that movie. I had no plans to see it in theater. I got to see it when I was flying back to the Philippines before, obviously, I moved here permanently. And I saw it on a plate. It's not very funny. It's somehow the special effects didn't look better than the original movie, which I believe was from the 80s. But
yeah, the editing was weird too. They had that Michael Jackson dance scene, sort of dance scene, but it was like cut and edited, but you could still see that something was edited. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
But if you say, hey, listen, this wasn't a funny movie or this was a bad remake, well, that's because you don't appreciate women. You don't like strong women in leading roles in action movies. That's what you were saying, Doug.
Yeah, that's with that sort of famous viral video with Jordan Peterson. I think her name is Kathy Newman from the BBC, where he would say his argument, then she would repeat it back to him. She would, so what you're saying is, and then she would just like straw man him, and you'd be like, that's literally not what he said. And then, of course, he would be like, no, that's not what I said. I said X, Y, Z. And so what you're saying is, and
what you really mean is this.
Right.
Yeah. Straw mans are the worst. And it is distracting. It's so easy to get sucked into one of these, Doug, where somebody takes you off on a brand new journey that you were never even speaking about, but they kind of put you on the defensive because you want to defend yourself. Nobody wants to be called a racist. Nobody wants to be called a misogynist. Nobody wants to be called a lot of these names. And once somebody kind of accuses you of it, it's like a natural defense to start defending yourself rather than saying, I didn't say any of that. Those aren't my words. Those are your words.
Yeah, and something, particularly when you're a bigot or you are a racist or whatnot, there's no way that you can really disprove their negative, because it's like you can never be in my head. So all I can tell you is you're wrong. I'm not. But as long as they throw it out there, it's like they just want it to stick. They just want that hovering in the air. Well, maybe Doug is a bigot, maybe. And so if it shades the conversation after that, and you're just like, okay, well, go to my Twitter feed, go to my Instagram feed, go to my YouTube videos, like, quote me, please show me where I said something that shows that I'm this demonic individual, this evil person. And typically they will never actually provide you with proof. It's just, no, I could read between the lines, and I see in between the lines, you're a bad person.
I literally have thousands of hours of recorded content with my face on it. I'm not exactly hiding here. And yet they still have to if they want to say a lot of these things, they have to twist my words and take them completely out of context, or completely change them and alter them to read between the lines of what I actually meant.
Right. They try and play Professor X with you all the time, and it's like, you're really bad at playing Professor X. You should not do that.
Absolutely. So that one's one you definitely have to look out for, because that will lead you down the yellow brick road, and you'll never get back to your original point. And That's just a way of invalidating, some of your criticisms. Another one that I find really interesting, and we get this one a lot, is the false binary. A line of reasoning fails by limiting the options to 2 when there are in fact more options to choose from. I just made a video on Warren Ellis returning to comic books. He was out of comics for a year after the accusations of essentially womanizing an emotional, I don't know, they called it emotional distress that he was putting on these women, like, because he wasn't completely being honest with them, and he was like I said, he was a womanizer. And they said, well, if you don't completely castigate Warren Ellis and say that he should never return to comics again, that's because you hate women. There's got to be more options than that, Doug. Is the world a black and white world, or is the world complex? There's a lot more moving pieces to this.
Well, just because there's been many CADs throughout history, and they're going to continue to exist. And so unless you're saying that a CAD can never have a job, or we should totally ostracize this person from society, it's possible to be like, you know what, I just don't like this guy, so I'm not going to buy his work. And then typically in the past, if you didn't like someone, you could just like ignore them. And it's like, I don't like you, you don't like me, you go your way, I'll go my way, and best of luck to you, dude. But these days it's like, no, I don't like you, I must destroy you. So it's a very bizarre.
And if you don't feel the same way, it's because you are this. It's not like that. Warren Ellis, what he did, and I imagine for some reason, I feel like you agree with me, that going out and sleeping around and promising women certain things to gain access is bad behavior, morally reprehensible. I would never want you around my sister or any other family member. I wouldn't want you to mentor any of my friends that wanted to get into comic books. It seems like you're a creep. But all the women were of age. If you read the testimonials, they were all consenting. They just they're mad after the fact once they found out, I guess, about the other women. At some point, the other partner has agency, even when there's more of them and they didn't know about the other ones. I don't like what he did, but he didn't break the law. And he didn't break any of his contractual obligations. If somebody wants to hire him, they can hire him. I don't have to buy his book.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where social media has created this situation where people demand that you are as emotionally invested in any given subject at any given time as they are. So if on a Wednesday, we don't like Wes because of any number of reasons, and our anger is just really intense, you need to match our intensity, or else there's something wrong with you. Where it's like, maybe I'm just not personally invested in Wes's life or something like that. I obviously am, because we're friends, but it's just like, name the person, and it's like, I don't need to be as angry as you are about this, but I can say that certain behaviors are wrong, and if someone broke the law, then they should be held to account by a jury of their peers and be held responsible.
Yeah, so just because somebody doesn't agree with you doesn't mean that they wholesale, they hate women or something. Things are more complicated than black and white. There's rarely ever a situation where everything is a binary option, Doug. Even the most high temp things that really get people's blood boiling, the things that really get people emotional, there's often way more than one or two answers.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to things that happen behind closed doors, romantic situations between two consenting adults in some bar in Philadelphia in 2010. I'm just making up a scenario, and it's just like, do you really want me to delve into this? I don't. I'm not going to. And like I said, if something illegal happened, throw the book at the person, go through the judicial process, the legal process. But otherwise, I don't want to know about so-and-so's romantic life. It doesn't concern me. So I'm just going to keep focusing. I got 10,000 things in my own life that I got to focus on if I'm going to be the best version of myself I can be. I don't want to get into somebody else's tit for tat arguments on Twitter. Never
fall for the false binary. You, just because you don't agree doesn't mean you absolutely wholesale disagree. There are plenty of shades of gray for these kind of ideas. Another fallacy that we have out there is the equivocation or ambiguity. This is when a word or phrase or a sentence is used deliberately to confuse, deceive, or mislead by sounding like it's saying one thing but actually saying another. The best example I can think of in today's society is social justice. Social justice. How could you not support social justice? Well, justice is supposed to be blind. I don't know that social and justice really work together. And then when you think about what's all the things that come along with social justice, there's not a lot of just to it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of times with these terms, people define them differently, and if you try and actually get someone to agree on the definition of the term from the very start of the argument, they will not want to do that, because if they agree to the actual say racism, what is racism? What is the definition we're using here? They don't want to define it that way because they know that it'll be narrowly defined so you could actually have a productive conversation. They want this sort of ambiguous, nebulous definition that they could cast a wide net on everybody that they want, that they don't like. And so it's like when I find somebody who won't define the terms and they're using things in a specious way, it's like, okay, this is going to end badly, so I'm just going to disengage from you right now because this is going to go nowhere and devolve into the ad hominem arguments you talked about, straw man arguments, all of these things, red herrings, and so I don't want to have that sort of situation in my day.
This is something that's really, really common in today's society. Everybody they don't ever actually want to tell you what they're doing. So they want a term or a phrase that describes it as nicely as possible. And a lot of times has nothing to do with what they're actually trying to do. It's very frustrating, but you got to look out for it because they are trying to sucker you in and make you look like an idiot so that they can, screen crab it and say you're a bad person. That's a lot of times what they're trying to do, Doug, is they're trying to get you in a gotcha moment so that they can kind of have control over you later.
Right. Whenever I feel someone's just setting me up for a gotcha, you usually can see it. It's just down the road and it's coming as you're just like, okay, I can see this. I can see what you're doing here. And I'm just going to take a U-turn and go the opposite direction.
Another, this will be the final one where we kind of talk about like logical fallacies. There's more than this, but these are the ones I see a lot today, is the appeal to pity. Appeals to the compassion and emotional sensitivity of others when these factors are not strictly relevant to the argument. The one I'll use here is Iceman. When they made the change from Iceman, who was canonically straight, to now he's gay, when you're like, well, we've got 50, 60 years of history, 40 years of history of this character. We've seen his thoughts within the work on the comic books. So we know that this is how he was thinking the entire time. This change makes no sense within the canon or within the way that this character has ever acted. But Doug, the LGBTQ community is, is a marginalized community. They need more representation in comic books. And Iceman, it's good that he's been turned gay now because there's more representation.
Yeah, there was a woman on Twitter that a while ago was having this debate with me, and I didn't get to it, but there's a BBC interview with Stan Lee where he is confronted with this new reality, and he is just like, what are you talking? Like, basically, he's like, what are you talking about? What? I didn't know about that. And he says, like, I didn't get into the sexual proclivities of my characters too much, and basically, I don't know, but you're told that there's all sorts of like undercurrents to this character, and really he was always gay if you understand the undercurrents that are there. And it's just like you said, like, we've seen the thought balloons. We have decades and decades of continuity showing one thing, and my thing was like, you could change characters over time, but you can't just snap it's a magic like, oh well, Jean Grey says I'm now gay, so therefore I am gay. And then like just accept everyone's supposed to be like, oh, okay, cool. So you're just like, that's bad writing. Strip out the all of the activism stuff out of it. It's just bad writing at the end of the day.
Yeah, and if you look at the arguments, if you strip out the emotional blackmail that most people get when you get into an argument like this, and the people that are arguing really don't have a leg to stand on because it doesn't hold up to the history of the character. But they don't want you to think about that. They got to take that part out out of the argument or out of the equation because it has to be an emotional issue. That's what a lot about this is. It's trying to blackmail you emotionally and trying to make you, like I said, be silent, kind of maybe feel a little bit bad about yourself. But you got to stand your ground, Doug. You have to.
So when it came to anytime there's a character and he's maybe they like race swap him, the character becomes black or whatever. And if you say like, well, that's kind of weird. And then they say, well, you just have a thing up against black characters. It's like, I literally grew up with like Rhodey as Iron Man. It's like, I loved Cardiac. I was seeing the Spawn movie in the theater when it first came out before any of you people were even born. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you could just go down the list. It's like Storm. My X-Men was, Storm was front and center. And it's like, okay, well, none of that matters because you disagree with me on this particular one issue. It's like, okay, well, Miles Morales is like a decent character, but I feel like they should just give him a different name. I don't care if he has spider powers, but just saying he's the Spider-Man. The Spider-Man. It's just like, if I disagree with that, then suddenly I have a thing against black characters. It's like, no, I have a disagreement with this editorial decision, but I like plenty of black characters. I've loved them since I was a child.
Yeah, it's crazy. And people say the darndest thing, especially in the YouTube comments. That's where I get most of my interaction these days. I'm not on Twitter as much because I don't find it altogether useful. I feel it, you get all these arguments, these false logical fallacies all the time. But I had one person one time, you'll probably like this one, Doug. They said that because of somebody said they called a country third world, and they said that means that I was xenophobic.
You of all people?
Yeah. I'm xenophobic. I have a fear of foreigners.
Oh, well, you must be the deepest undercover spy of all time if you don't like
I'm pretty open about where I live. I'm pretty open about that. I'm a full-time resident in the Philippines. I live here with my family. My wife, she's Filipino. I have, my kids are Asian. But because one thing got said, all that gets wiped out, Doug. My family history, my marriage, my children, where I actually live doesn't matter anymore because that's fair game to call me a xenophobe. And that's just...
Yeah, they would probably... their next thing would be like, well, just because you live in the Philippines and just because your wife isn't wife, it doesn't mean that you're still not subconscious. I saw some of the mental gymnastics.
Well, a lot of white men that are married to non-white women, they're secretly the most racist. And I was like, what? Like, how do you get there? How do you get there?
They can't accept that there are women or men of different countries or different ethnicities or races that actually politically, it usually boils down to politics, is if you are essentially...
Yeah, it was about Bill Burr and his wife, who's black. And they were trying to say that he was racist, and his wife's like, hey, I'm here. I'm his wife. They're like, yes, some white men married a black woman. They're the most racist. It's like their game that they're playing.
Yeah, that goes back to, so they'd be like, well, it's Stockholm syndrome or whatever. and so once again, you can never prove otherwise. They've gotten the conversation to a place where it's like, okay, well, now you're just pretending like you could read my mind, you could read my wife's mind, and secretly behind closed doors, my wife is some sort of like, I don't know, bizarro like racist, and she hates her own people or something along those lines. They were saying
Tim Lim was a white supremacist.
Right. So it's weird.
Like, how do you get there? If you see Tim, I mean, the last name kind of implies that he might not be white. But just because he supported, whatever political stance that he supported, that automatically, took away his agency as an Asian American. And you're just a white supremacist, Tim.
Yeah, people try and put others into a box. They want you to fit into that box. And anytime you don't, they will try and shove you back into it because if you agree that human beings are complex and they have free will and they will agree with you on some things and not on the other, but not have any hard feelings towards you, if you do disagree, then all of a sudden you have to behave differently. You can't get into this weird tribal mode where it's just like outside my tribe, outside my box, must destroy person. And you're just like, so it's like, no, you actually have to be an adult. You have to be mature if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't fit into your nice little box.
Yeah, everyone has these preconceived notions, also called stereotypes, and they want to throw them all on you. I don't like being pigeonholed, I'll tell you that, Doug. And I don't understand where all this comes from. Me personally, you know this. When I was 17, I signed up for the Air Force. Obviously, I could not join then. I joined when I was 18. I took college classes, but they were like night classes or they're online. I know you were in the Army, but you ended up going back and attending, I think, USC full time. I hear a lot of my friends that once they got out of the military and went back to school full time, that they say it happens in university where a lot of this stuff comes from. Was that your experience?
Oh yeah. So when I was in the military, I was in Charlie 118th Infantry in Schweinfurt, Germany, and you have these multiracial platoons and companies, and so it's like there's black guys and Hispanic guys and couple Asians in mechanized infantry, but not too many. But it's like very diverse, and you have to be willing to die for the guy. It's like we might get deployed one day, and you might have to have my back, and I got to have your back. And it probably is a good idea for us to just be good human beings. And then so it's like you learn like, oh, people could actually get together or like get along, and they don't have to look like one another. Shocker. And then you get into the university, and they're telling like, hey, Doug, did you know that you're subconsciously racist? And then you actually subconsciously hate all black people. And there's nothing. I asked a woman this on during a presentation on Martin Luther King Day. I was like, well, what can I do with these unearned privileges to like make the world a bit like, how do I get rid of these unearned privileges, all this sort of stuff? Nothing. She was like, there's nothing you can do. You will always be subconsciously racist. And then I was like, well, I want nothing to do with you because apparently if I'm just always
That's
going
a
to
false
be
binary, Doug. False binary.
I was just like, I don't like your worldview. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of misery and resentment and anger. And so I'm going to find someone out there who is not a total defeatist and thinks that, you know, I'm always going to be subconsciously racist and just a bad person. So see you later.
Yeah, my buddy Sean, he was in the Air Force with me. He ended up being airborne. So he did I think he did 12 deployments before he got out. So he was in Iraq, Afghanistan. He did a lot of stuff. He got out, went back to school full time. And he said after like 6 months, he realized when he was writing his papers, he couldn't write what he thought.
Right.
He could not express an actual opinion because he would not be graded on the structure and the way he presented his argument. He was being graded on whether or not the professor agreed with him or not.
Mm-hmm. When I was in graduate school, I did a paper, and the guy got back to me. It was a terrorism class, and he was like, "This is not graduate quality work, D." So then I was like, "I'm going to do an experiment." I did the exact same amount of work, and all I did was bash George W. Bush the entire time. Hey, you know, it's just like suddenly I magically was a really great student, and it was just like, you're a bad teacher, you're a bad professor. If all I have to do is parrot your opinions to get an A or A- or whatever it was, it's just like, you're a bad teacher.
Yeah, it sounds like I don't know, just the way people. I always imagined going to university full time, like you're getting out there and you're meeting all these different people, and you're kind of diversifying your worldviews. You're like, hey, I finally met this person from these different parts of the world. Kind of like when I got in the military. But from what my buddy Sean said, he's like, no, you kind of get like boxed in, and like this is who you are, and you're not really allowed to talk to each other. You're not really allowed to express opinions or anything. Nobody really talks freely.
Yeah, I really, when I got out and when I was in school, so I met my wife, so then I was just like, my future wife, I should say. So I was like, but there was always a part of me that I really missed the camaraderie of the military, and I missed that you could have honest conversations with people. and you could vehemently disagree. So guys could basically come to blows on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday night be having like, hey, I'll buy you a beer or something, that sort of thing. And it's like, when in the academia, it's not like that. And so I was always like, should I go back in? Because I was really kind of happier. I didn't realize when I was a young man, because I had no other data points and no reference for what jobs were like. I didn't realize that, there's idiots in all jobs. And so I was always sort of like, do I go back? But like I said, I met my future wife, and I couldn't leave her.
Now I know your wife's American, but she's Asian American.
Yeah, she immigrated from China when she was pretty young.
Yeah, my wife obviously she's Filipino, and when I talk to her about this stuff, she is confounded. She doesn't understand how these things happen. Obviously, there's a little bit less diversity as far as the population in the Philippines. It's not quite the melting pot the United States is, but like in her mind, she thinks like the U.S. is the land of milk and honey. You get there and everybody's nice to each other. And once she started realizing that everyone's being pitted against each other over superficial traits and all these stupid things, and like everyone gets labeled, and then you're basically brought into conflict with each other. You're not allowed to like sit there and even be cordial to your neighbors anymore. Like she can't even understand how it's like that. I know your wife's family. Do they have a similar like experience, or are they completely Americanized now?
When my wife first got to USC, they tried to recruit her into these Asian American clubs. And she was just like, it's so weird. Like they're obsessed with being Asian and like only like, weirded out that she was dating a white guy or whatever. And it's just like, so that you basically had these like ideologues on the college campus that were trying to self-segregate themselves. And she was like, yeah, they're just like super weirdly obsessed with being Asian. And like, I don't know. I think it's weird. I don't want any part of that. And so she did. But then she was also like, the college campuses, she was like, all these people like talk about like America's the most racist place in the world. And she's like, maybe they should go to China for a little bit if they want to see like racism.
Go to Korea. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, you don't understand that like there are people that are racist in other parts of the globe. And actually America is in many ways head and shoulders in terms of, the melting pot and bringing people together and finding ways to, kind of coexist in a peaceful manner with people from all over the globe.
Yeah, it's crazy. With the outside look at it, she doesn't get any of it. And I wish I was in that place. I was like, I wish I felt that way too. I wish I didn't have to know about any of this stuff. It's
a lot of times immigrants are the ones, they actually have a better idea of American ideals than current Americans who are, they don't have any sort of gratitude for the freedoms that they enjoy and the liberty that they enjoy on a daily basis. So when you come from a country where it's a police state, or you have a government with a heavy hand on things, they can see things much more clearly oftentimes than suburban Americans who spend multiple days just drinking Starbucks lattes.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look at the earning potential within America. Almost like immigrants outperform everybody because they come in and they realize all the opportunities that are sitting there waiting for them to make money and build a legacy for themselves. And they outperform everybody. Every category of American gets destroyed.
Yeah, I think going into the military right out of high school in many ways was such a blessing for me because I got to see the world and I got to see it from the outside, and I got to go places where you're like, wow, I didn't realize, just something like going to Chili's for dinner and having my chicken tacos back in the day or whatever. It was just like, you don't realize how good you have it, man. You have it really good.
When I was in Afghanistan, every once in a while you'd have to go to Kandahar. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in Kandahar, they have a Chili's. But every once in a while, it might get like bombed or something. Not bombed, but like mortared or something. Or they never have the food that you want. You might get food poisoning, but you still go there. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to chance it because I've been stuck on the side of a mountain for 3 months.
Yeah, that was so. Mine was this cakewalk deployment to the Macedonian-Serbian border, where it's like I existed on bread and strawberry jelly and M&Ms and pound cake MREs for like 6 months.
I love you call that a cakewalk deployment. Most Americans, if they actually had to suffer through that, they would not be able to handle it for more than a day.
I was in really good shape, that's for sure, doing those patrols.
Yeah. So halfway through my deployment to Afghanistan, technically I did 2 of them. I did one. They sent me home. They said you have to be out of country for 30 days before you can start the second deployment. And when I came back, I sent myself like a package full of like cup of noodles and like cans of chicken and stuff because I was like, I'm not eating this chow hall food anymore. It's so bad. So I almost gave myself a heart attack from all the sodium though.
Well, when the top generals fly in, they usually have something really good. That was always funny to me. I was like, when the right person or like a senator flies in, it's like the dessert trays. At least when I was in, anyway, I was just like, oh, suddenly we have like the greatest desserts ever today. That's weird. Yeah. Great timing there.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Super Bowl Sunday. Like we were getting tacos and pizza and all this great food. Like, oh my goodness, and never again.
Yeah, our thing was like somebody would visit on Thanksgiving. They would come to like the OP, and then like to be like, please don't, like you're gonna make us do, the honor guard, or you're gonna inspect us on Thanksgiving. We just want to watch like a football game that's taking place, hours and hours now, however many time zones.
That's the Army experience. Obviously, when I was deployed, I was with the Army. I was like kind of co-located with them. I was kind of a special present. But in the Air Force, on a holiday like that, if you're, in an Air Force deployment or if you're back home, the generals and the chief master sergeants, the highest ranking enlisted guys, they're at the DFAC and they're serving everybody their Thanksgiving dinner because they're so much nicer than the Army guys.
Yeah, no, ours was like somebody would fly in on a Black Hawk or whatever, and you'd have to be inspected, and it was like, hey, great to meet you. I was like, well, you would actually ruined my day because we spent the past 10 hours cleaning for you. Thank you.
Cleaning in Afghanistan don't really go together.
Thanks for the coin. Appreciate the coin, though.
It was so embarrassing. I was actually, I know this is off topic. We'll get back to it here in a second. But we were in a meeting with the highest ranking Army guy, like in the area that we were at. He'd come in on a Black Hawk, like you'd said. And he's having a meeting, wanting to talk about our issues that we're having. I'm sitting in the back. I'm not allowed to go off post like the Army soldiers. They can't let me do guard duty. I have all these restrictions on me because of the reason that I was there. So I'm sitting in the back. I'm not going to say anything. But there's another Air Force guy there, and it was so embarrassing. He stands up and he lets this guy, lets like the E9 know that it really bothers him that he has to take his ABU blouse off to play ping pong, like in the rec area. And he's like, I've literally got teenagers going outside the wire every day, being shot at and blown up. I understand that you might get hot playing ping pong, but that's not why I'm here.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Why are we wearing the same uniform? I would have never spoken. You can literally see guys, IEDs going off right outside the base where we were. Like, never want to be those guys. It's crazy. So
yeah, man, fun times back in the day.
It's crazy what you're willing to go through, when you're a younger man. I'm glad that I'm retired and that part of my life is past me, but it just gives you a different, point of view on all the things that are happening with like the culture wars and stuff. If you get out there and actually meet people from all over America, and I don't know about the Army, but in the Air Force, there are airmen from England, Puerto Rico, Dominican. You get members of the U.S. Air Force from all over the country. You don't actually have to be a U.S. citizen. Not everybody knows that.
Yeah, I think the military puts a lot of the Twitter stuff and social media stuff in proper perspective, where it's like, man, these guys, if this is the worst you have it, is your day was ruined because somebody called you a meanie on Twitter, like you might need to get out a little bit more.
So let's talk about dealing with the mob. These are some of the things I do because it does get frustrating. You don't want to make yourself look stupid, and you don't want to get really drug into one of these things. One of the most important things I find, Doug, is when somebody says something to you and your heart's beating, your blood's boiling, give yourself a minute or two before you actually respond, because once you calm down, you're probably going to be more cordial and less likely to just go off the hinges and say something stupid.
Yeah, a lot of people, they're so conditioned on Twitter. As soon as somebody says something, boom, I got to say something back right away. And it's like, don't do it. Just wait.
Don't take the bait.
Just put it aside. Just go to a different window for an hour, close it, whatever. And for the most part, that person will move on. And if they're really psycho and they just keep at it for an hour while you're gone someplace else, like, then you know for sure, like, I don't want to talk to this person. This person's nuts.
Definitely ignore stuff. If you can, just ignore it, move on. A lot of times it's not even worth your time, unless, you do have to put up your objections, but once you've made your point, you've made your point. There's no reason to let yourself get stuck in. You've made your point, you can move on with your life.
Yeah, I usually try and give someone the benefit of the doubt. But once they go to those sort of fallacies that you talked about, the logical fallacies, it's like, all right, I'm pulling back now. And they're like, oh, you scared? Are you scared? Oh, you got nothing for me. And I was like, you're just like, no, I'm under no obligation to get into an hour-long circular debate with you about stupid things. So yeah, you could just think that I'm a coward or whatever you want. I don't care. I'm going to do my own thing. Bye.
Yeah. Another thing, on YouTube, hide your user. Once you say a certain words on my channel, you get hidden forever. That's just the way it is. And on Twitter, I used to block people a lot more. I block less because I don't use it as much. But if someone's bothering you, you don't have to allow them into your Twitter feed. Just block them. Yeah,
so I don't like the massive block bots. I've never liked that. And initially, so Twitter has even changed over the years, because it used to be that, people would be annoying to you and then you could ignore them. They go away. But now they will go through your Twitter feed and they will look for anything to basically file a bogus report against you on Twitter. It's like, I'm more inclined to block people if I feel like, no, this is a person that's going to basically try and go through my entire history and find the one tweet that they could get me nailed on. And it's like, I don't know. So these days I'm more inclined to block if I feel that they're going to bogus report me.
Yeah, it's not worth a lot of times. Then obviously remember who's important. Is this person a friend of yours? Are you an acquaintance? Is this someone you've never met in your life that is saying these awful things about you? They don't know anything about you. They don't live in your house. They certainly aren't in your head. They aren't your spouse. They're not a family member. They're not even a close friend. What they say really, unless they go to what we're talking about next, really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and a lot of people that are lashing out and angry and acting in a bizarre way on Twitter, they have their own issues. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's not even worth it to really get mad at them, because I actually might feel pity for them because whatever is causing them to act in this outlandish way and just say mean, nasty things to people and, throw that vitriol out there. It's like, you know what? I don't know what's going on in your life, dude, but I'm not going to feed it. That's for sure. And so, yeah, I'm going to walk away.
Absolutely. And finally, take a break. If you notice that you're not being as productive as you would like to be because you can't get off of Twitter in these debates or whatever, take a 2-day break. Limit yourself to however many minutes. That's what I've done, and I'm much more productive, and I have I have a lot less stress. Let's put it that way, Doug.
Right. And so it's one of those things where social media can work for you. If you have a YouTube channel like yourself, there are a lot of positive things about it. And as long as you don't fall into those pitfalls, it could actually be a pretty nice place. There's always going to be weirdos, saying mean things, but you can minimize those interactions quite a bit. Yeah.
So here's the problem, though. You get all these false logical fallacies everyone wants to throw at you or whatever, because they want to silence you. They want to isolate you. They want to humiliate you. They don't want you to stand firm for your beliefs. The problem is if you do like you have and I have, and you continue to say your beliefs, and maybe people start noticing you, that's when you get into the cancel culture stuff. They start trying to dox you. That's one of the reasons. From day one, I've always showed my channel on my face. I don't want anyone to think they have any type of leverage over me. Right. I am who I am. I tell you who I am, and the words that you see are coming out of my mouth. And that's the way I know that's kind of the way you've done your channel. But they will try and cancel it. They will try and get you fired. They will try and to ruin your life if you don't maintain the silence that they are trying to keep. They're trying to get you to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that's a good way to disarm people. Not everybody can have their face out there and their real name, but I feel like when they know that you're not scared of them, and they know that there's nothing that they can do to make you sort of put on a mask or go total black and radio silence or whatever, it's like nuts. Well, we know we can't really dox him because he doesn't care. He tells people where he lives. They know where, and so it's like, yeah, you can find me. I don't care if you want to. It's like, well, I care, but it's like, I'm not afraid of you. So it's like, then that takes that off the table for them. And also, when people don't have anonymity, they're more likely to actually be more cordial when you're not hiding behind that screen name and an alias. It's like they almost create characters for themselves. So like, no, this is not really me. This is just the mean character I created. And like, actually, no, it's kind of you, and you're a mean person. So maybe you should actually go face to face with somebody and learn a little bit more about yourself instead of lying and pretending that you created a character or a persona online.
Now, you being a journalist and working for an established news organization, I can Google your name and have access, like, essentially to your department. Have you experienced that where people have taken umbrage of maybe some of the things that you've done on your YouTube channel or things that you've put out on social media where they've tried to get you canceled?
Oh, yes. It's not one of those things that you always like want to like broadcast and say that, but there have been people over the years that have contacted my employer, contacted my boss, contacted every single editor at the newspaper while saying weirdo things about me, created fictitious stories about me, and relayed them to my employer. And so, yeah, that has definitely happened over the years at times. But luckily, at least for my employer, they're used to that. Newspapers are used to people going off the handle and saying weird things. So for the most part, it was awkward to explain to my boss about indie comics. And
let me tell you about Comicsgate.
Yeah, I did have to have a very awkward conversation or two with some people at work about it, but they were fine. And I got through it, but not everybody has that luxury. There are some places where they would be like, I don't know what's going on, but I don't have time for this. And if you can't get it under control, you're out of here. And I feel crazy. Bad.
I saw one person, they had donated a large sum of money to a GoFundMe, and they were able to use the limited amount of information that was like in that person's whatever profile or whatever, find out who they work for, and essentially got them fired over donating money anonymously or trying to.
Right. Yeah, it's creepy and it's weird, but I sort of look at it. It goes back to that Jordan Peterson. Like, you always need to operate from the idea that I'm going to tell the truth as accurately and succinctly as possible, and whatever happens afterwards, that is ultimately in my best interest, whether I understand it or not. So if I'm talking to you right now and somebody flips out and goes to my boss and makes up a story and I got fired or something, I'd be like, whatever, dude. Like, it's like, adapt and overcome, speaking about the military stuff, and drive on.
Yeah, it's just, it's crazy how we got here. Really, I think the term has only really been in circulation for like 3 years now, really like 2018 maybe, when you started hearing about cancel culture. And now it's so prevalent. You hear it on mainstream news now.
Yeah, and it's weird that somebody in Los Angeles can take issue with a total stranger in Miami and then actually feel like they need to work around the clock to dig into this person's life and then get them fired. And it's like, I think you have too much time on your hands, or your priorities are screwy, or there's something in your own life that you're not like, you feel like you have to create a dragon to slay because you have so few of them in your own life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It just, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, it was all about the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And that's like one of those things. It's almost in every single culture, but I guess everyone just did we throw the golden rule out the window?
Yeah, I try to say that I don't like to be pessimistic, but I do feel like the culture is in a very precarious place right now, where people don't have empathy for others, and they always project the worst motives onto other people. They want you to, whatever they say, they want the best possible interpretation of what they say. But when you say something, they automatically infuse the worst motives into it and then react to that. And like 90-something% of the time, they're not even anywhere in the ballpark as to what you were talking about.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. It feels like it's just swept Western culture, and it's disappointing to see this, to where people think that, they have the right, or it's their job to go out there and get other people to conform to their beliefs or their worldviews. And if you don't, I will do whatever I can in my ability to ruin your life, even though I have no idea who you really are.
Yeah, they try and deputize themselves the sheriff of the internet or something, and it's
the morality police. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like log off, get offline, go outside, read a book, and go from there.
Yeah, go fall in love, meet somebody, get in an argument with a real person. Learn what it feels like to have your feelings hurt, and then maybe you can have some empathy for other people.
Yeah, man, it's weird, but there are still places on the internet, on YouTube, where you could have productive conversations.
Absolutely. That's what I hope that we do here on my channel. I know you do that on your channel as well when you've got the time. I guess we'll kind of wrap this up. We're coming up on an hour. I'm so sorry to take it up so much of your time, Doug. Do you have any other projects maybe that are coming out that you want people to know about?
Well, I always like talking to you.
Irons in the fire, right?
Yeah. Well, I always like talking to you. So happy to talk to you for an hour. Happy to catch up. In terms of other projects, Soulfinder Black Tide is doing very well in Iconic Comics, and we are working on Soulfinder Infinite Ascent, which is the 3rd volume, and that'll be a 72-page story with Matt Weldon once again as our artist. And there's a short story that is added to that called Soulfinder Warcry, and all the art is coming in, inks are coming in, covers are coming in. Dave Dorman is supposed to get me some stuff this week, some sketches, and he'll be doing that in July. So everything is rolling along, and but yeah, just check out Iconic Comics. Timothy Lim is a good friend of mine. He's got stuff over there. He's got his campaign is closing down, Common America v Black Hops. So check that out. And other than that, just keep working hard.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate the time. And if you haven't gone over to Doug's YouTube channel, he doesn't put up quite as much content as he used to, but he still does his live streams, and they're really good. He talks about all the things that are happening, not just in comic books and pop culture. Doug is a very wise man. He has a lot of good ideas and opinions on those things, and I think you'll be well served going out and checking out his content.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.